Good afternoon, ENG, for you. We're going to continue on today with Act 2, Scene 2. We're going to pick up around line 390, where Polonius has come to announce to Hamlet that the actors have arrived, even though everybody is already aware of that fact because of the flourish of the trumpets, etc. Okay.
Come hither, my lord. Upon my honour.
Then came each actor on his act.
The best actors in the world, either for tragedy, comedy, history, pastoral, comical, historical, pastoral, tragical, historical, comical, historical, pastoral, scene individable or poem unlimited. Seneca cannot be too heavy nor Plautus too light. For the law of writ and the liberty, these are the only men.
Oh, Jephthah, judge of Israel, what a treasure hast thou.
Okay, so let's take a look at the annotation along the side here. Jephthah is a character in the Bible who sacrificed his daughter to fulfill an oath. And so Hamlet here is making a comparison between Polonius and this Jephthah dude in the Bible. The comparison is a pretty apt one. It's pretty appropriate in that Polonius is forsaking his daughter, is using his daughter to get what he wants. We call that Machiavellian. When somebody is willing to do whatever it takes to get what it is that they want. So a Machiavellian is explained by suggesting that the end justifies the means. So however you can get to that end, you are then justified. And we do see this in Polonius, for sure. This is not the first time that Hamlet is going to say derogatory things about Polonius. It's pretty obvious that he's not a big fan of Polonius.
What a treasure had he!
By one fair daughter and no more, the which he loved passing well.
Still on my daughter.
Am I not in the right, old Jephthah?
If you call me Jephthah, my lord, I have a daughter that I love passing well.
Nay, that follows not.
What follows then, my lord?
Why, as by lot God wot. And then, you know, it came to pass as most like it was. The first row of the pious chanson I'll show you more of. Well, look why my abridgments come.
Okay, so Polonius is... He's not really swift. So he doesn't get the reference here to Jephthah. He doesn't really get the reference here to Jephthah. And he just kind of uses it to his own better understanding. He says, oh, he's still really focused on my daughter, when in fact that wasn't his point at all. He was using it as an opportunity to say some derogatory things about Polonius. Okay, so in come the actors or the players, and Hamlet takes this opportunity to welcome them in a very, can you put the sign on the outside door? Right there. Yep. In a very formal and customary way. So it was the custom that royalty would formally welcome the actors in. And so this is what we see Hamlet doing in this next little section. He's going to specifically, though, talk to the boys, the men, and he's going to say to them, oh, I do remember you. I remember the last time I witnessed a performance of yours. You were all so much shorter and younger, and now you have beards on your faces and you've grown taller. And he's going to say, you've grown taller so that you are closer to heaven. So he is going to talk specifically to the boys. In the Elizabethan times, of course, women weren't allowed to act on stage. It was looked at as, not acceptable. And so young boys would actually play the parts, would play the roles of the ladies, particularly boys who weren't old enough to have had their voices crack, right? So they could talk a little bit higher. And so he is going to make note of that as well. He is going to say, pray God your voice, like a piece of uncurrent gold, be not cracked within the ring. So he's going to say, your voices have cracked now. You've all grown up, basically.
You are welcome, masters. Welcome all. I'm glad to see thee well. Welcome, good friends. Ah, my old friend. Thy face is valanced since I saw thee last. Come.
Okay, so Valiant, let's take a look at the annotation here. It says bearded. a beard was a symbol of valor. So he's saying to them, oh, you've all grown up so much. You have beards. Look at you guys.
Was thou to beard me in Denmark? What, my young lady and mistress? My lady, your ladyship is nearer to heaven than when I saw you last, but...
So talking to the boys, of course, who used to play the ladies, saying, you've grown up.
The altitude of a chopine. Pray God your voice, like a piece of uncurrent gold, be not cracked within the ring. Masters, you're welcome. We'll lean to it, like French falconers. Fly at anything we see. We'll have a speech straight. Come, give us a taste of your quality. Come, a passionate speech.
All right, so he's going to say to the first player, the main player, I remember a lot of your performances in the past. Give us a little taste of how good you are, how capable you are. And Hamlet is going to suggest a particular speech. He is going to start with... I remember attending one particular play, and he says... it was actually too good for the general public. They didn't really enjoy it, but I did, he's going to say. There was a speech in that play that was really powerful, and he's going to ask the main player to just recite that play because to Hamlet, it was very powerful.
Speech, my lord.
I heard thee speak me a speech once, but 'twas never acted. Or if it was, not above once, for the players I remembered, pleased not the million, 'twas caveat of the general. But it was as I received it, and others whose judgments in such matters cried in the top of mine. An excellent play, well digested in the scenes, set down with as much modesty as cunning. I remember one said there were no salads in the lines to make the matter savoury, nor no matter in the phrase that might indict the author of affection, but called it an honest method, as wholesome as sweet, and by very much more handsome than fine. One chief speech in it I chiefly loved. 'Twas Aeneas' tale to Dido.
Okay, so he's saying, yeah, I remember this one play that you spoke, that you recited, and he says, I really like this one speech in it. I chiefly loved it was a story of the fall of Troy. So we did talk previously about the fall of Troy. So a couple of the names that you should be familiar with are Priam. Wait 1 second here. So Priam was the king of Troy, and he actually gets slaughtered by Pyrrhus, Pyrrhus, who is the son of Achilles. And so in this story, based on apparently some historical truth, the Greeks invade Troy, and the method that they use is that they build this huge wooden Trojan horse, and they present it to Troy as a gift, and Troy accepts it, and they open the gates to their walled city, and in comes this huge wooden horse. Now at nighttime, what ends up happening is it was big enough to hold people in there, and so members of the army were hiding inside of this Trojan horse. At night, of course, they snuck out from the horse and slaughtered the whole city. They just sacked the whole city. And so this guy, son of Achilles, Pyrrhus, plays the hero, the main character. Not that he's a good guy. He slaughters the king, this King Priam. And we're going to see this very, very moving reaction of his wife, Queen Hecuba, who is mourning over her dead husband. At the very end, the player, the actor who is going to be acting this out, gives out an extremely powerful rendition of this, to the point that it almost makes Hamlet weep. It is so powerful. It is so powerful, in fact, that it prompts Hamlet to compare that actor to him, saying, this actor has acted out this performance with such feeling and so believably, and it's not even a real story. He has no connection to this story at all. He's just an actor. And he says, and then there's me, who I'm connected to the story. It was my father that got killed. I promised to kill Claudius, and I have done nothing. I am a coward. So watching this player is going to prompt Hamlet to do some like inner analyzing of his actions, and he's gonna decide that it's time to step it up. He's not doing what he promised to do, and it's making him feel like a coward.
And thereabout of it especially where he speaks of Priam's slaughter. If it live in your memory, begin at this line. Let me see. The rugged Pyrrhus, like the Acanian beast.
Again, this Pyrrhus guy is the son of Achilles, and he's going to kill King Priam.
So it begins with Pyrrhus. The rugged Pyrrhus, he whose sable arms, black as his purpose, did the night resemble, when he lay couched in the ominous horse.
Okay, so he's talking about Pyrrhus, who is hiding in this ominous horse, the Trojan horse. And he's full of blood because he's just been, they're at war. And so he's full of blood, and you're going to see lots of reference to that. He is in total gules, which means red, full of red. Going to talk about the parching streets. The streets of Troy were on fire. Talking about how he wants to murder the Lord, meaning the king, King Priam. A little bit later, coagulate gore, talking about blood all over him that's coagulated, kind of dried up. And then at the very end again, hellish Pyrrhus is looking for the king so that he can slaughter him.
Hath now this dread and black complexion smeared with heraldry more dismal.
Blood.
Head to foot now is he total gules.
Red.
Horridly tricked with blood of fathers, mothers, daughters, sons, baked and impasted with the parching streets that lend a tyrannous and damned light to their vile murders, roasted in wrath and fire, and this o'ersized with coagulate gore, with eyes like carbuncles, the hellish Pyrrhus old grandsire Priam seeks.
Oh, for God, my lord, well spoken, with good accent,
Such an ass kisser.
and good discretion.
Anon he finds him, striking two sworded Greeks. His antique sword, rebellious to his arm, lies where it falls, repugnant to command. Unequal matched, Pyrrhus at Priam drives, in rage strikes wide, but with the whiff and wind of his fell sword, the unnerved father falls.
Okay, so this is the actor. Already we can hear in his voice the passion with which he is reciting this section of the speech. And so he's talking about how Priam has this ancient sword that he cannot wait to use. And he is actually a very, very seasoned sword bearer, and it's saying he's unequaled matched. Pyrrhus at Priam drives. So he takes his sword and he drives it right at King Priam. And he's going to talk about how when he kills Priam, the moment that Priam falls, the whole city crashes behind him at the same time.
Then senseless Ilium, seeming to feel his blow, with flaming top stoops to his base, and with a hideous crash takes prisoner Pyrrhus' ear.
So Pyrrhus can hear that the moment that Priam falls, the city crashes down at the same time. It's going to actually stun Pyrrhus to the point where he's not really sure what to do. So it's going to say he is going to be motionless, like a painted tyrant, and it's going to all happen kind of in slow motion, right? Priam gets killed, the city crashes behind him, all in slow motion, to the point where Pyrrhus is like, oh, what do I do now? Soon after that, though, he is filled with more vengeance, and he continues on his killing spree.
For lo, his sword, which was declining on the milky head of Reverend Priam, seemed in the air to stick. So as a painted tyrant Pyrrhus stood, and like a neutral to his will and matter, did nothing. But As we often see against some storm, a silence in the heavens, the rack stands still, the bold winds speechless, and the orb below as hushed as death, anon the dreadful thunder doth rend the region. So, after Pyrrhus' pause, aroused vengeance sets him new work, and never did the Cyclops' hammers fall on Mars his armor, forged for proof etern, with less remorse than Pyrrhus' bleeding sword now falls on Priam.
Okay, so in that moment, after the whole city falls behind the king, Pyrrhus stands there with his sword kind of in the air, like slow motion, right? He's not really sure what to do, and then all of a sudden he is filled with vengeance and he keeps going. In fact, what he does with his sword is he cuts up Priam's body with it. Now, Queen Hecuba is off in the distance and is filled with intense pain and sorrow, and she starts letting out some of her intense sorrow.
Out, out, thou strumpet fortune! All you gods, in general synod, take away her power. Break all the spokes and fellies from her wheel, and bowl the round nave down the hill of heaven, as low as to the fiend.
This is too long.
All right, so here it explains that Pyrrhus is challenging the goddess Fortune, saying, you are not in control of me. I'm in control of Fortune now. So he says he's vengeful to Fortune, and he's breaking all the spokes of her wheel. So the goddess Fortune is represented by the wheel of fortune that turns and turns and turns, and she's in control of whether you have good fortune or bad. But Pyrrhus here is breaking all the spokes, and they fall from her wheel, and they all fall down on the hill from heaven, because he is grabbing control of his own fortune.
The barbers with your beard, prithee say on. He's for a jig or a tale of bawdry, or he sleeps. Say on, come to Hecuba.
Okay, so Polonius says, this is really boring. And Hamlet says, of course it's boring to you. You would prefer something, a little jig, or a tale of bawdry, like a sexual storyline. And he says, of course you would sleep listening to this wonderful tale. So again, he says some negative things here about Polonius.
But who had seen the Moblet Queen?
The Moblet Queen? Oh, that's good. Moblet Queen is good.
Run barefoot up and down, threatening the flame with...
Okay, so talking about Queen Hecuba here, the Moblet, the muffled, she's filled with so much anger and angst. She is running barefoot up and down, threatening the flames. So we see some really good imagery here. She has bison ruum, meaning blinding tears, and clout around her head. Her crown is gone. Late the diadem stood, and for a robe about her length, a blanket. She didn't even have royal robes on. She just had a blanket around her, and she is screaming in defiance of this man who slaughtered her husband. And she has no choice but to stand there and watch as Pyrrhus cuts up the limbs of her husband, and she is screaming and crying. And this actor is, as I said, reciting such a powerful rendition of this that it affects Hamlet very, very profoundly.
Bison room, a clout about that head where late the diadem stood, and for a robe about her lank and all her teamed loins, a blanket in the alarum of fear caught up. Who this had seen, with tongue in venom steeped against fortune's state, would treason have pronounced. But if the gods themselves did see her then, when she saw Pyrrhus make malicious sport in mincing with his sword her husband's limbs, the instant burst of clamor that she made, unless things mortal move them not at all, would have made milch the burning eyes of heaven, and passion in the god.
Look where he has not turned his colour and his tears in his eyes Pray you no more.
All right, so he finishes off by explaining how the wife of Priam, Queen Hecuba, had so much feeling and so much intensity coming out from her cries that if heaven was watching, that the stars would start to cry. That's how intense her sorrow was in that moment, screaming and screaming at her sorrow.
As well. I'll have thee speak out the rest soon. Good my lord, will you see the players well bestowed? Do you hear? Let them be well used, for they are the abstracts and brief chronicles of the time. After your death, you had better have a bad epitaph than their ill report while you live.
My lord, I will use them according to their desert.
God's body kins man better. Use every man after his desert, and who should escape whipping? Use them after your own honor and dignity. The less they deserve, the more merit is in your bounty. Take them in.
Come, sirs.
Follow him, friends. We'll hear a play tomorrow.
Okay, so Hamlet is watching this, and he is starting to think of a little plan in his head. So he whispers in this moment, after he says to Polonius, these players have proven that they are very, very skillful. And he says, yes, I will accept your service here in the royal court, and you will perform a play tomorrow. So the actors are going to be very happy. They're going to get paid. They're going to do a performance. And so everybody leaves except for the main player. And Hamlet says, dost thou hear me, old friend? Can you play the murder of Gonzago? And this main player is going to say, oh, yes, of course, we know that. And he's going to say, tomorrow night, I want you to play that play. I want you to perform that play, except I'm going to write a couple lines that I want you to perform. They're not in the play, but I want you to insert them into the play. And the player says, yeah, I could do that. These are really good actors. So he says, of course I can do that.
Hello. Hello? Dost thou hear me, old friend? Can you play the murder of Gonzago?
Aye, my lord.
We'll have it tomorrow night. You could, for a need, study a speech of some 12 or 16 lines, which I would set down and insert in, could you not?
Aye, my lord.
Very well. Follow that lord, and look you mock him not. My good friends, I'll leave you till night. You are welcome to Elsinore.
Good, my lord.
Aye so. God be with ye.
All right, so everybody leaves, including Rosencrantz and Guildenstern. So he announces he is now alone on the stage. And we call this second soliloquy here the rogue and peasant slave soliloquy. And in this soliloquy, we're going to see that his concerns are different than the concerns he voiced in the first soliloquy. In the first soliloquy, he's talked about like a macrocosmic scale, how the whole world is crumbling, and how he has lost faith in the honor of people in the whole world. In this second soliloquy here, we see a more microcosmic scale or version where he is going to focus in on himself and how he feels that he is a coward. This is where he's going to compare himself to the actor, saying this actor did such a wonderfully powerful rendition, and I am not doing a very good job at my own life. I should be as powerfully enacting my own life as this actor enacted this speech. And he's going to say, I suck, basically, and I am a coward. I need to rev this up a bit, he's going to say. I want my brain to start thinking, he says. And then he is going to come up with a plan that is going to catch the conscience of the king. He's going to ask the actors to perform a play that's very similar to the actions of Claudius in killing his father. And he's going to watch really closely how Claudius reacts. If Claudius reacts with horror, then he's going to know that, yeah, he is guilty. He's going to test Claudius out to see if the ghost was telling the truth or not.
Now I am alone. Oh, what a rogue and peasant slave am I.
And he is a slave, right? He is the only person that can set everything right again. His father is walking in purgatory for maybe ever. And it's all up to Hamlet to set it all straight again. And he knows in order to set this chain of being back into the right order, he has to kill the current king, get the unnatural king off of the throne, and and fix things that way. It's all on his shoulders. He is very much a slave.
Is it not monstrous that this player here, but in a fiction, in a dream of passion, could force his soul so to his own conceit, that from her working all his visage wand, tears in his eyes, distraction in his aspect, a broken voice, and his whole function suiting with forms to his conceit? And all for nothing? For Hecuba? What's Hecuba to him, or he to Hecuba, that he should weep for her? What would he do had he the motive and the cue for passion that I have? He would drown the stage with tears, and cleave the general ear with horrid speech, make mad the guilty, and appall the free, confound the ignorant, and amaze indeed the very faculty of eyes and ears. Yet I, a dull and muddy metalled rascal, peak like John o' Dreams, unpregnant of my cause, and can say nothing.
Okay, so again, he's clearly comparing himself to this passionate actor. He's saying that actor, if he lived my life, he would have everybody in tears, and because his rendition of my life would be so passionate. And he said, me, I am dull and muddy. I'm a rascal, like John o' Dreams. I'm a dull, dreamy person. I say I'm going to do these things, and then I don't, basically.
No, not for a king, upon whose property and most dear life a damned defeat was made. Am I a coward? Who calls me villain, breaks my plate across, plucks up my beard and blows it in my face, tweaks me by the nose, gives me the lie in the throat as deep as to the lungs? Who does me this, huh? Why, I should take it, for it cannot be but I am pigeon-livered and lack gall to make oppression bitter. Or ere this, I should have fatted all the region kites with this slave's offal.
All right, so he says here, he swears that he should have done things differently. And he says he must be pigeon-livered. Let's take a look at the annotation here. The liver was considered the source of courage. It was thought pigeons were mild-mannered because they had no gall, a fluid secreted by the liver. So he's saying, I have no courage. I promised to do all these things, and then I'm pigeon-livered. He says, by this point, I should have been feeding the guts of my uncle to the birds, to the kites.
Bloody, bawdy villain! Remorseless, treacherous, lecherous, kindless villain! Oh, vengeance! Why, what an ass am I? Aye, sure, this is most brave. That I, the son of a dear father, murdered, prompted to my revenge by heaven and hell, must like a whore unpack my heart with words and fall a-cursing like a very drab a scullion.
Okay, so he says here, I'm an ass. I'm stupid. I have promised all of heaven and hell that I'm going to get revenge, and I'm just like a servant. I take all this time to convince myself what I should do instead of acting swiftly like I said I would. And so he says, oh, my brain, I want my brain to start working, and then it does. He comes up with an ingenious plan.
Fire pumped. About my brain. I have heard that guilty creatures sitting at a play have by the very cunning of the scene been struck so to the soul that presently they have proclaimed their malefactions.
So his brain starts to work and he says, I have heard that if actors are really, really skilled, they can make people in the audience so filled with emotion that they start to ask for forgiveness of all of their sins, all of their malefactions. So he's got a plan here. He's going to have the actors the next night perform the murder of Gonzalez, and he's going to input some lines to make it replicate what happened to his father. He's going to watch Claudius really closely. If Claudius is guilty, then he'll know what he needs to do. So he says, I have to wait. Maybe the ghost is lying to me. Maybe the ghost is not believable or trustworthy. But this way, I'll know for sure whether my uncle is guilty or not, and then I can act swiftly.
For murder, though it have no tongue, will speak with most miraculous organ. I'll have these players play something like the murder of my father before mine uncle. I'll observe his looks. I'll tempt him to the quick. If he but blench, I know my course.
The ghost I
The
have
spirit
seen.
that I have seen may be the devil, and the devil hath power to assume a pleasing shape. Yea, and perhaps out of my weakness and my melancholy, as he is very potent with such spirits, abuses me to damn me. I'll have grounds more relative than this. The play's the thing, wherein I'll catch the conscience of the king.
All right, so he says, I will know for sure, and I want to know before I proceed, because I want to make sure that the ghost isn't tricking me. Like, let's take a look at the annotations here. In Shakespeare's time, people believed that ghosts who claimed to be the spirit of a particular person were actually sometimes the devil in disguise. So he doesn't know whether he should believe or trust this ghost. But he says, you know what? Doesn't even matter. I'm going to collect my own evidence, and I'll do it in the play. The play, within a play, is the way that he's going to know for sure whether he is going to proceed or not. All right.